friends? Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works Workshop. Getting ready to start on another project. This is another one of those projects where your first thought is, this doesn't look too bad. But the more you look, the closer you look, the more you go, oh my goodness. Yeah, when you first look at this, you think, this is an easy one. It's an old Gibson J45 Deluxe. It's a nice looking old guitar. You know, pretty decent looking guitar until you start looking. Look at the binding. Oh my goodness. You know, it's tortoiseshell, but it's broken out. It's the good old binding, but you can't get this kind of binding anymore. See how it's all broken out of here, and it's cracked. It's too hard to show it on camera, but it's cracked, literally with lines cracked down through it all over the place. Back and front. There's no fixing that really, not reasonably anyway. So it's all coming out and we're going to put all new in. That would be enough right there because that's a big job. But then I noticed, you know, hey, there was something rattling around on the inside and this kind of popped out. That's a brace, of course, on the inside. But that wouldn't be too bad, except for the fact that, you know, it's cracked right here all the way through. It's cracked right here all the way through, and those are loose. You can move them. It's cracked on the back, pretty much through here. It's cracked around the edges, and I can't remember where that is right now. Right here's one. It's cracked on the edge. You know, it's just getting little whoopties everywhere. Made in about the mid-70s, roughly, Kalamazoo, Michigan. Pretty cool old guitar. Got a little bit of a crack right here next to the pickguard and right here. The pickguard probably has shrunk a little bit. Hasn't turned loose yet or anything, so, you know, if it ain't broke, I ain't gonna fix it. So that part there is okay, I think. Not crazy about the bridge, but at least it's not one of those adjustable bridges. It's a pretty thin bridge. Let me look down the guitar body. Wow. Oh, bummer. I hadn't done that yet. Well, I was wondering why this was so low. I bet you somebody's cut this down over the years. It's on the edge of a neck reset, I can pretty much tell you. You know, when you look flat down this plane, you'd like to see this just about end up roughly level. I mean, just in that ballpark. But the bottom edge of the fretboard is still above this. So that's at least a 1/4 inch. Actually, it's quite a bit more than that. It's actually showing about right here. So, you know, it's showing about this much is above the top of the guitar, let alone the binding. You know, if the binding was above it, then you're really on the edge. Down here, you're probably doing a neck reset. It's pretty high. It's pretty high. Again, I'm the guy that says do the easy thing first. We'll look at it. We'll look at the truss rod. I doubt seriously the truss rod in this case is the problem, because the neck looks perfectly flat. I mean, like it just looks perfect down through there. The angle is the problem. You know, it's not the underbow, it's the angle. And the angle is like this. The truss rod ain't gonna change the angle at all. Yeah, that don't look good. I think I probably should just quit looking, because the more I look, the more I find. This guitar could actually be a career. I mean, it really needs a lot. It really does. I think maybe I ought to call the customer and make sure he really wants to go this deep. This guitar has been sitting here a while. In fact, you know, you can actually almost see under the neck. I don't know if you can tell that in the video or not. You can probably see how it's just not looking real good. It's misleading in the video. I can tell. I can't, or at least in the viewfinder, it doesn't really show up as much as when you're looking like this. It don't look too good this way, I gotta tell you. But I won't try the neck reset till I get some strings on it. It came without strings, you know. So we got braces to fix, we got cracks to fix, we got binding to fix. If all that works, then we've got a challenging setup. You better go get your adult beverage, because this is going to be a long one. Well, friends, it's been a couple of weeks since I did that little opening segment on this guitar. And this guitar, I think, reminds me of an old song. It's crying time again, you're gonna leave me. Except that I would change that to, it's crying time again, and this old guitar is gonna need me. Because this puppy is in sad shape. I want to show you something about this binding right here. It's got to come off. There's no fixing it. There's no patching it. I mean, you know, maybe a rocket scientist could fix it or patch it, but I'm not that guy. So we're going to take it off and we're going to replace it. And I've already scoured the internet looking for replacement binding. Can't find any. Everybody always says, oh, you can just get tortoiseshell binding. Well, I can't. I've searched all over. You can get this fake stuff that just really looks cheap and really looks crappy, in my opinion. It's really just brown and black plastic that's melted together and just runs together, almost like if you were to stir those two colors in paint and just let them dry. I mean, kind of like swirl them around. That's what it looks like. It doesn't even sort of resemble tortoiseshell like it used to. This old nitrate binding or acetate binding, whatever you want to call this stuff, really did look like tortoiseshell. But you can't get this stuff anymore, and I'll show you why right now. So why do you have trouble getting this old type of plastic binding anymore? Well, here's several pieces of it, as you can see, that I've chipped off of here, because again, it just comes off like ice. It just comes off in chips. You can't take it off. It's impossible. But anyway, I've got a little pile of it right there. Now, I promise you, this is not trick photography. This is not warm or hot or preheated. I mean, it's ice cold right now, or as cold as it is in this shop, which is ice cold to me right now. So I'm going to turn this on. You can see the torch is blowing. Now watch, I'm just going to touch it. I'm not going to hold the flame on it. You see the flashing? There you go. See? Just touch it. And look at the fire we have there. That's why you can't buy this anymore. I mean, it is unbelievably flammable. It's just crazy flammable. How would you like to work in the factory where they make this stuff? The one guy comes in smoking. Oh my gosh. Everybody should run for cover if that happens. But you can see it's still burning there. I mean, seriously, we are talking major league flammable. Now, believe it or not, as flammable as that is, that's not the most flammable I've seen. There is some of it, especially in some of the old pics that I've seen. You just take a regular match, just touch it to it, and it just goes poof. It looks like a magician trick. It just goes away. And you wonder, where did it go? You know, it just makes a real quick flash and it's gone. As quick as that burnt and everything, look at this. It's not even hot. It just burns up. It just consumes itself and there's nothing left. There's literally nothing left. I mean, you can grind this up in your fingers and it's just gone. There's nothing there. It's amazing stuff. But alas, you can't get it anymore. And that was the good looking stuff. So we've got to replace it. So what am I going to replace it with? Well, since I can't find anything that I think looks suitable, I mean, because we've got a neat old guitar here and it's going to be a neat old booming guitar when we get done with it. I want to put something on it that's at least classy. You know, since I can't find the original or anything even resembling the original, then I'm going to just go from total scratch. I'm going to put this binding on it. It's all real wood. It's sycamore, quarter sawn sycamore that I cut right off the farm here. We'll put it on there and do some kind of a staining or whatever to make this stuff really pop. At least it'll look good. That's the best I can do. Since I can't match it, I might as well just make it look better than it looked originally. So what is my order of operations on this? We've already talked about all the problems it's got. Loose braces, cracks on the top, rotten binding at this point. You could almost start on any one of them and you'd be okay. I would say the cracks would come before the braces inside, at least that much. But I don't think the cracks have to happen before I at least remove the binding. I'm not going to put the new binding on probably until I fix the cracks, but I figure I might as well go ahead and remove the binding. If that creates any damage, then basically the next step will be fix all the damage, which is the cracks and whatever chip out we get and all that. So that's going to be my order of operations. At least that's the way I'm starting out. You know how my plans can change, so here we go. Just so you know, safety first in this case. I've got my close-up glasses, but these are also safety glasses so that they're much bigger and protect my eyes, because chipping this stuff out, it just goes everywhere. And also to that end, you can see that I don't have my typical carpet down. I just have some towels down because I'm going to have to shake them out after we're done, because this stuff would just go down in the carpet and it would be hard to get out. It's just brittle like glass. You can just see it comes off in little chunks, and it comes out in little tiny shards, and like those just hit me in the face just now. It's just not pleasant to take off at all. And you just have to take your time and just go around it and take it off, because, you know, there's just big chunks missing everywhere. There's no fixing this. I'm going to try different methods. I've got the scalpel here. See if the scalpel will cut the seam. I don't know if it'll do any better or not. I'm afraid I'm going to cut my finger with the scalpel. You know, in places it just comes off so easy, and other places it just doesn't want to budge. See, like right there, that's probably not too bad right there. It's kind of loose. Even that, though, is not easy to get off. Wow, just doesn't want to cooperate. Well, I'm going to shut the camera off, work on this, and if I come up with a better method, I'll show you what that is. But right now, it's just going to be chiseling it away. I don't remember if I showed you the trauma on this part of the guitar before, but there is some trauma right here. I don't know if it got dropped or what. This chunk of binding was missing, so I imagine it got banged right here and it broke down into the side there a little bit. I don't know. We're going to have to fix that too, because that's a big chunk of wood that could easily get chipped out as I try to break this binding out right here. So let's see what happens when we pry on it right there. Oh, that part came out pretty easily. That's probably because of the trauma. And let's see if this one comes loose. Not as much. Not so much. Nope, that one's not going to come loose without tearing out some wood, it looks like. Lucky me! Well, I'm really having trouble getting this binding to come off. I've tried scoring it with the scalpel to some minor success, but very little. I'm going to try heat. Now, I've just shown you how flammable this is, and people get on me left and right with a heat gun like this, because this heat gun could burn the guitar up. There's no question. It gets that hot. But it also is very controllable. This one here is an infinite control. So you can go from blowing your hair, I mean literally that light of heat, to, you know, scorching the top of the guitar. I presently have it set where it's pretty warm, but you can see I'm putting it right on the back of my hand. It's not that hot. It's pretty warm though. In fact, I'm going to warm it up just a little bit more than that. And my thought is that I can at least warm this binding up, and it may get warm enough to make it slightly more, you know, easy to remove. And it's just a thought. I don't even know if it's going to matter or if it's going to help. Again, I'm testing it on my hand first, because I don't want to catch this stuff on fire. It feels warm. It's not hot. Just feels warm. I'm just seeing if that makes a difference. Not so much that I can tell right now. I'm going to go just a little bit hotter. I don't know. Boy, I tell you, I'm up against it. I really thought this would just shatter off. I really thought it was so bad that it would just chip off. There are places where it is that bad and it will chip off, like right here where it's just disintegrated. You can see it. But in this area right here, it's not disintegrated, just in that one little spot. So that little spot is really hard to get off. If I make any progress, I'll show you what I'm doing. I have settled on a method of using the Dremel tool for removing this binding. I have tried a bunch of things and nothing wants to cooperate. This Dremel tool base has that slick tape on it. I can't remember what this is called. Got about 4 letters in the name. I can't remember. But anyway, it's very slick. It's very smooth. It glides on top of here very easily. This piece here I made for doing binding work. It's made out of aluminum and it's on these 2 rods that slide through. And I have it set for the height of the binding, if you will, and the depth toward the top. I actually have it set a little shallow toward the top. It's cutting most of it away and leaving a very thin plastic layer that I am just prying off by hand right now. I could potentially set it a little bit deeper, but I'm a little bit leery of setting it deeper because I'm afraid I'll cut the purfling, and I don't want to cut the white purfling. You know, it's a little more work to do it this way, but I think it's a little safer, and I think we'll end up with a good result that way. Now, to be perfectly truthful, while this is slick and everything seems fine, at the very first cut I made, I noticed on the top of the guitar this line here, and it parallels this, so I'm assuming that somehow or another I caused that. I don't know that for sure. I'm assuming I caused that. I don't remember seeing it before, and it was right after I did this, so maybe a piece of grit or something got stuck under here. I don't know. But, you know, we got so many things to fix. I'm not too worried about it as long as I, you know, am aware of that, and I just watch it. I'm really watching it really close now to make sure that doesn't happen again, if I caused it at all, and I don't honestly know. I could have. With that caveat, it's going to be a lot of work. I'm just working on it very slowly like this, and I'm really not going to film it because it's going to take a while. Well, I finally found the method that works. I've got my Proxon router base there with all the stuff as I showed earlier, and the difference is I changed bits. I had the little 115 bit, which you can buy you know, at any box store for the Dremel. Mine was the old one with the spiral cutter, but it was just burning the plastic, and by the way, that's not a good thing on this kind of plastic to be burning. I was afraid this aggressive bit with the carbide cutters, I was afraid that might be too aggressive and bust it out, but it seems to cut it really well, so that's what I'm doing. I've got this thing set so it leaves the thinnest film of plastic on here. I mean, very thin. I haven't measured it, but if I was to measure it, I would say probably 10/1000ths of an inch, which would be like 1/4 of a millimeter, if that makes any sense to you out there in millimeter land. So 0.25 millimeter, if that helps you. But anyway, that's about how thick that I would say that is. Anyway, that peels off fairly easy, but it's a little tedious also. By leaving that tiny film, that leaves this white purfling intact, and I don't have to worry about replacing that. So I'm going to continue on. I'll show you just a little bit of the process. Then we're just going to stop the camera, and I'm just going to do the work. Safety glasses and dust mask. I think that's all the process I'm going to show. You just saw me cut from right here to here, and that was in that place where it had busted out, and it cleaned that up pretty good. I'll take the X-Acto knife and see if we can peel off some of this to show you how it peels off. It doesn't peel off too bad. In some places, like right there, it's peeling off pretty good, and you can just peel it right off. It's a thin layer. In other places, even that's a little hard to peel off. So it just is a little tedious, but at least it's coming off, and we are getting it right down to bare wood. You can see there that that came off real clean. So anyway, that's the process. I'm not going to film any more of that. I'm just going to keep doing that until I'm done. Well, my friends, I have been working on this guitar trying to remove this tortoiseshell binding, and I got to tell you, it's one of the most frustrating binding removals I've ever done. It is the strangest things that are occurring. For instance, you know, you just can't peel it out of there. It won't peel. It breaks. You know, it takes the finish with it if it breaks wrong, so you got to be very careful. So I thought, well, I'll try the router option, and I've been routing it out, and there's 3 things that occur. This binding is in 3 states, if you will. Part of it is just way gone. That's the shattered stuff, and it just comes out no problem at all. It just shatters like glass. Some of it's pretty far gone, and that routes out pretty well. But that stuff that's still in pretty good condition, which is about half of it, is impossible to get out of there. It's stuck really tight, and the router just touch it and it instantly melts. I have got the top done, but I've only routed the channel around the back. And the reason I wanted to show you that is, or tell you that, is because if you look close, this is a piece that I took out of there after routing. You can see that it's actually in the shape of an L, if the camera will focus. But you can see it's like in the shape of an L. So the binding went on it like that, but I routed out most of it. You know, I left a very thin layer of the binding in there is what I'm telling you. And now I'm going around with a chisel and prying that very thin layer out. You talk about time consuming. I'm not bothering to film any of it because it's just taking forever. So here's just a little bit of the technique for getting the binding L shape that's in there out. I just kind of wiggle this chisel behind it and just keep wiggling it very slowly. With any luck, it comes out in little tiny pieces without breaking the finish around it. And to be honest, in places it has chipped the finish a little bit, but you know, this is a very destructive process. You know, this is another one of those reasons why people say, why don't you just take the back off? It's so much easier. Try this. Just try it one time and then you'll go, now I know why you don't take the back off of most of them. And keep in mind, they're not all this kind of binding, sure, but even easy binding is very destructive to remove off of an instrument. And this is definitely not easy binding to remove. Very difficult. Just a big mess. Well, my friends, I'm sure I mentioned just earlier, slightly earlier in this video, probably, that taking the back off of the guitar is a big deal. But if you ever are going to take the back off of the guitar, if you already have the binding off, that's the time to do it. I mean, so I don't want to miss the opportunity here if that's what I need to do. Now, I'm trying to analyze this, and I thought I'd analyze it with you guys, and that is, this guitar is cracked right here, quite a ways. It's cracked here all the way. I don't see other cracks on the top other than right along the pickguard here, along the neck. There's hints that it could have a minor crack here, but I don't actually see a crack here. This crack goes all the way down to the bridge. I know there's at least one loose brace. I am 99% sure there's more loose braces because of the way it sounds when I tap on it. Pretty clear there's a problem there, and it's kind of across the whole top. So I kind of think we ought to take this apart, but let's just look inside it with our new fancy Wi-Fi camera and see if we can see what's going on in there.
My whole life, no more corporate strife. Put your alarm clock away in the drawer. No more conference calls, and no meetings in the halls, and no business to conduct in a bar, and no self-serving boss, nor the threat of the loss of the paycheck that I've earned 8 to 5. 'Cause I'll be out on that ranch where I can reach the first branch of that corporate tree grown from on high. I don't own it, I just manage its worth. It's a small slice of heaven placed down here on earth. Care for his trees, water his sun. I don't own it, I just rent it from God. I tell them I'm history, that's okay, for I've got a plan. And there'll be no regret, no hard feelings, no debt. We're all doing the best we can. So here is my last word. Some may think it absurd, but I know that someday you'll find it's better to leave than to stay and to grieve. Instead of a paycheck, you'll have peace of mind. I don't want it, just manage its worth. It's a small slice of heaven placed down here on earth. I care for his trees, I water his sun. I don't own it, I just rent it from God.
So if the video turns out from the video camera, you saw up inside there that the one little brace was missing. The top is loose from some of the back braces. There's almost no way to get glue in there really well. I mean, through the sound hole, you can get it done, but you can't do as good a job as if you had the back off. And because it's broke so many places, and because I do suspect there's more than just the one loose brace, I'm going to go ahead and take the back off this. I really hate to do it. Even with the binding off, it's still a really big job, and some are bigger than others. You just don't know what you're getting into. It's that same thing as I mentioned before. It's like the bullet in the gun. Once you pull the trigger, you can't stop. So once I start taking the back off, I'm committed. I've got to get it off. Here we go. Right here I have my bridge heater, the thing that I made for taking bridges off. And that supplies about 400 degrees Fahrenheit of heat is what I have it on right at the moment. That can heat up my tool really warm here. I am going to try inserting it in the edge of this guitar to melt the glue as I insert it. You know, there's just a lot of problems doing this. You can just break things out, and I already did. It's crazy how, you know, people always say it's so easy, just take the back off. Well, just with light insertion pressure, I already broke that piece right there. I was just trying to insert in between here to get it opened up, and that piece broke out. So that gives you some idea how easy it is. Heating it up real hot, trying to go in here. Yeah, see, the next piece is going to break out too. The lining, the kerfing is going to break out all the way around this thing, it looks like. The kerfing is really thin. It looks like it's just going to break out. What a pain. I really never had that happen before, but there's always something when you start on these things, how bad it can be. It's just, you just don't know till you get started. You know, it doesn't look like the glue is separating at all. And people have said, oh, use alcohol, that'll do it. Well, you know, good luck with that. I've tried all that stuff too. At least I'm starting to get some separation there now, finally. But you can also crack the back of the guitar, so you got to be very careful about that. And here's where the brace comes through, and now you got to get under that because the brace is glued to the back. So I've got to go under here, and then I've got to start a new crack on this side of the brace. That's another reason I don't like the braces going all the way through the kerfing. I like to stop them at the kerfing. I also think it gives you better sound anyway because it's not so stiff. When they go through like this all the way, it just makes the back removal that much harder. Now there we got a little crack going on right there. So we've got to be careful. It's just not easy. It looks easy, but it's not. And the other thing you need to keep in mind about removing the back is this is the easy part, doing along the sides. Removing this part is the easy part. Getting down here to these end blocks where the neck is glued on, where the tail block is glued on, that's where the hard part of the removal comes in, and that's where you can really damage the back. It also depends on how the grain of the wood is, and like right here, as I start going this way, now the grain is going up, so now it wants to break out through the top, or through the back, I guess you'd say, but it wants to break out instead of opening up the seam. So I'm going to have to come back from this direction. Anyway, I'm just showing you a little bit of this. I'm not going to show the whole thing. It's going to take me an hour or two to get this all loose. And you can see the process. You just heat up the knife and you just keep inserting it in different places. And I'll show you what it looks like when I get her further along, maybe how to take off the end blocks. One of the dangers of doing this kind of work on camera is not showing all of the issues in the proper order. This thing had two cracks, one right here and one right here, and they're on both sides of the block, almost exactly even with the block. You know, it's got a seam down the center, so these are not seam cracks. Whatever happened to this thing when it got dropped and broke this, and I'm assuming it was dropped because that's probably what made this top come loose at the end back here. Anyway, whatever caused that probably caused these two hairline cracks also. And anyway, I'm trying to get this apart, and those hairline cracks are now separating on me even more. There's not much I can do about it. I mean, they were already cracked, I think, so taking it apart like this will help me be able to glue them back. I think I'm into the block here now on this side. I've actually got the whole back loose. Well, I say the whole back loose. I haven't got it loose over to this crack yet, so I need to do that. But I've got the back loose everywhere except for the blocks now, and this little bit over to the block. So I need to do that. You have to be very careful because it just wants to crack and break everything. There, it's coming loose pretty easy right through here. Again, it's cracked loose below here. So we're going to lose this section right here again. I would prefer it not to come out, but it's going to. This hairline crack here, I'm going to straddle it, try to lift both sides at the same time, and we're knocking out a lot of the kerfing in here. We may have to replace a whole bunch of kerfing because a lot of it's falling out. Yeah, see, like that. Not much you can do about it sometimes. Not what I want, but it's what I got. And now I'm into the block. This section from here to here is the block. And this is by far the hardest part of the camera's not really showing this very well, I'm sorry. I'm interested in what I'm doing and not watching the camera. Now I'm into the block. It's solid from here to here, and the block is probably an inch deep. So this is going to be very difficult to get loose. The problem with forcing it is you will crack the back even worse. So you just have to work very slowly. Keep the knife heated. It's already cracking a little bit. So I just say again to anybody who says, just take the back off, you can fix it easy. Well, come show me how you do that. You just come show me. That's all I got to say. Because it's not that easy. You know, some come off much easier than others. I've had some that just pop off. These ones that don't want to pop off sure do create more problems. You know, this is just cracking all the way through here. So it's just, there's a lot of finish repair now. I mean, it's just going to be a major issue. And you do have to put a certain amount of pressure on it because it won't come loose just by wishing about it. You have to push on it. The thing is, you just try not to go too far, too fast. You just do a little bit at a time, but even that is causing cracks. I think there's going to be a significant amount of damage on this, unfortunately. See, mahogany is kind of it's a hardwood, but it's a, in my opinion, if this makes any sense to you, it's a soft, brittle wood. The wood itself is softer, but it's also very brittle in terms of it likes to crack and break. I mean, you can bend it fairly easy when it's steamed and all that. When it's dry and straight like this, it doesn't like to give up the ghost without breaking and cracking. It would actually be easier to get this loose if this were rosewood or something else that's a much harder wood, although it still would probably crack, just not to this extent. There, I made quite a bit of progress there that time on that one. It's stuck down right here and it's cracking right there. I think there's going to be tear out on the inside right there because it just doesn't want to come loose right in that area. It's cracking through. It's really stuck down right there for whatever reason. I'm trying to attack it from different angles to try to get it to break loose, but you can see it's breaking through the finish right here. And it's just got a spot there that's just stuck down and it does not want to give up. There it finally did. And actually it came out fairly clean considering. You can see there's nothing stuck on the block there. It's clean. So, you know, I did the best I can do. That's all you can do on this kind of thing. I was telling Caleb, this is not unlike when you're on the operating table. You know, the doctors are doing the best they can, but there's things happening all the time and they just have to deal with them as they come up. And they don't want you to know about all those oopses, but there's plenty of them out there, trust me. And it's the same way with this. We're now about ready for the big reveal, which just means, for me, a lot more work because I got to fix all the problems we created taking this back off now. All I've got to do now is get it loose from this neck block, and I believe it'll just be totally loose. So I'm going in very carefully, trying not to do any more damage than I have to. This knife is really hot. And the glue does melt as I stick it in there. You can feel the glue giving and melting. Still doesn't mean it comes apart easy. There's the seam. I think we did it. We're free. There you go. And you know, you can see some breakout. I mean, fairly clean, really. I mean, it's about as good as you're going to do something like that, honestly. And no matter how good it is, I always want it to be better. You know, it is what it is, as I say. This is not, you know, an easy process. It is a very destructive process. They have a plywood bridge pad in here, I can tell you that for sure, which is not my favorite at all. This is a very unique bracing pattern, as you can see. In fact, I don't recall seeing that particular bracing pattern before. I probably have and just don't remember it, but I don't recall seeing that pattern at all. It's a unique pattern in my mind. You can see someone else has already cleated these cracks along here. I did not do those cleats. Those were already put in there and all the way down through to the bridge. So those cracks were already stabilized. But now I can see the cracks on the inside better that I couldn't see through the sound hole with the camera. And there are plenty of cracks and there's plenty of loose braces. All of these braces are loose. So it was worth taking it off. Just a lot of work to do it. Off camera, I've cleaned it up, and so let's talk about what we've learned about this thing. Well, we know for sure it's missing that brace. I can tell you that a bunch of other braces are loose. This one's loose, this one is loose, this one is loose, some of these are loose. Yeah, this one's loose here. With that many loose braces, and there's no telling how many more there may be loose, I think this one up here might be loose. And then we've got a piece of junk for a bridge pad. This is just plywood, I can tell by looking. Or at least I'm pretty positive it is. I'm looking through the holes and it looks to be plywood. I could be wrong on that. It could be a solid piece of maple, but I don't think so. Based on the tear out there, it's hard to say for sure. I called it plywood, think it is, but I might be wrong on that. I still can't tell for sure. But we'll determine that one way or the other. If it is plywood, we're probably going to take that out. If it's not, I might take it out anyway. We're this deep into it and you could put a better piece of wood in here. Again, this is where your sound comes from. This is where your best wood goes, in my opinion. Not some piece of junk. Even if it's maple, I mean, it's just a flat piece of sawn maple. It's not even quarter sawed or anything. It's not a high grade piece of anything. So probably that's going to come out if I can get it out without spending hours. And that may require routing, honestly. That might be the easiest way to get it out. It was just routed out. Boy, we've got our work cut out for us because just fixing all the cracks and the braces is a big job. Not to mention all the bust out. See, it broke out in a lot of places. You know, it just does that. Now, some of these places are where the braces go through, so that's okay. But like some of these places are not, like back in here, these are all breakouts that we need to fix. I have to determine which things have to be fixed. Like up here, this has to be fixed up here. There's just a lot of work here. This is not a 5-minute job, but I am glad I took it apart. I definitely made the right decision there. This thing was just not that fixable through the sound hole. I mean, even back here where this is all cracked and broke, you know, that was from the damage of when it got dropped or whatever. Yeah, it just needs a ton of work. So here we go. Well, my friends, I have either lost my mind or I've come up with an ingenious way to get rid of that bridge plate. And I'm not sure which, and I think there's a fine line. But I'm taking this gigantic router and I'm going to route that plate out. I made this routing plate, if you will, just to hold me up at a fairly level position. It's not perfectly level, but it's about as close as I can shim it and clamp it and get it level compared to the top. I'm not going to cut the full depth of this. I'm just going to cut out most of it and sneak up on it and see what happens. So I'm going to have to put on all kinds of dust protection and respirator, the whole bit, because it really blows it right back in your face. Wish me luck. Here we go.
I don't want it to just manage it.
Well, I wasn't kidding about the dust collection. It's all over my arms and my face and hair and everywhere. Yes, that is plywood. I thought it was. At least I'm pretty positive it is based on what I'm seeing. It's a high grade of plywood, there's no question about that. It's got many plies to it, it looks like. but I'm not even still positive that it is for sure. It's hard to tell the way it's cut, but I would say it is. I see lines going around it this way, and they look to be level, so I think it's plywood. It's really hard to tell. I've cut through most of it, or about half of it, I would say, trying to decide if I should go ahead and go deeper right now before I move any of the clamps. I think I will go a little deeper and see what it does. Setting it for about a 1/16 of an inch deeper, and we'll see what that does for us.
It's a small slice of heaven placed down here on earth. Care for his tree.
Well, that was a pretty good move. It did take off right down to the top. It was just about the right amount. You can see that some of it's still left there, and then right here you can see the top is exposed. So it was just about the right amount to take off. I didn't take off too much. I've raised the bit back up just a 1/64 of an inch just to ensure that I'm not going to be digging into the top. I don't really want to do that, at least not at this stage. I'm going to try to move these clamps a little bit so that I can make the circle a little bit bigger. Just barely big enough as it is. That ought to help me a little bit. It's going to be tough getting the rest of that out of there, but I think if I get the biggest part of it routed out in the middle, I can take this all apart and bust the rest of it out of there. It's what I'm expecting, at least. I sure hope it works.
I wonder his son, I don't know it, just read it from God.
Well, aside from feeling like the abominable snowman, I guess that went pretty well. Oh, wow. I set it at different heights because it was just hard to get all this perfectly flat to the top. So trim just ever so slightly. In areas I took a little tiny bit more off than other areas. So it's not perfectly flat. We'll just have to scrape it flat, but I think we can do that. I'm absolutely 100% sure it is plywood now. I was almost certain before, but I was trying to give it the benefit of the doubt, but it is definitely plywood. And so what I'm doing is I'm just taking my really sharp chisel and I'm just knocking off those plies on the rest of that's in here. If you try to go down and take the whole thing out, you're just going to bust the top. So you're better off just taking it in small bites and just eating it off of there a little bit at a time. And, it chisels off fairly easy, especially with a really sharp chisel. That's my approach. I'm not going to show the whole thing of removing that, but that's basically how I'm getting it out of there, and you just got to take your time till you get it cleaned off. So I'll show you what it looks like when we get her cleaned off. Well, I got her all cleaned out. It's just perfectly clean. You can see that it's just nice and smooth. I will tell you that even with all of this bracing and a 1/4 inch thick piece of plywood, and that really was a 1/4 inch thick plywood, even that, there's still a slight belly bulge. This is deeper here than it is around here, and that's because on the other side the strings are pulling up on this. Anyway, we'll fix most of that when we put the new bridge plate in. We'll flatten it back out a little bit. I don't think there's going to be any way to get it completely flat. Some of you are probably wondering why I took the time to take this bridge plate out before I fixed the cracks and before I fixed these braces and all that stuff. And the reason is I didn't like the bridge plate, number one, so I felt like I was going to take it out anyway. So I thought if I took it out first, that gives me access under all of these braces for better gluing. And because see, some of these are loose. This one here's loose all the way through, pretty much, and these are loose through here, so I felt like I could get in, better access. So it was the perfect time to do it if I was going to do it. So that's why I went with that first before I even tried to repair everything else. Plus I thought, well, you never know how much damage I'm going to create there, and I may have a huge rebuild anyway. Fortunately, there was no real damage there, so we should be in good shape. Now that I've got this thing apart, you would think, well, now it'll be easy to get glue in these cracks and put them back together. That's what you would think. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. You can't spread this. Some people say, well, just spread it. Well, if you try spreading this, you're going to break something. It's not spreadable. You can spread these outside edges and they're going to crack and break too if you do that. You cannot spread this whole thing. These braces won't let that happen. The braces are in here strong enough, even though many of them are loose, they're still in here strong enough. They're not going to let you spread this. It creates quite a dilemma. How do you get glue down in this tight crack? These are not open cracks. They're very tight cracks, as you can see. One solution is to use CA glue because it will penetrate and go down in there. But I don't like that solution. If I can avoid it, I try to avoid it. Partly because it'll ruin this finish if I get very much of it on the finish. You know, the other option is Titebond, which is a good option if there's any crack at all that you can get the glue down in. And yes, I know about suction cups and I know about everything you can imagine, vacuums and everything else, air pressure, syringes, the whole bit. The fact is, this is a very thin crack and the wood's very thin. Just hard to get the glue down in there. Suction cup might help a little bit, but it's not going to help that much because it's almost airtight. Here's what I'm going to try. This is a glue recommended by one of the viewers. I've been testing it on various things around the shop and it seems to be working pretty well. This is a CA glue knockoff. And somebody asked me, what does CA glue stand for? That's, what is it, cyanoacrylate, something like that. I'm not sure the pronunciation, but anyway, that's the main ingredients in super glue, cyanoacrylate. Anyway, this stuff is different. It's kind of a cross, if you will, between a glue of that nature, something like a Titebond. The picture shows it gluing up wooden parts for like model airplanes and things like that. But the advantage of this glue is it's water cleanup, but yet it's very, very thin. It wicks down into very tight cracks, very similar to CA glue. That's what we're going to go with because this won't ruin the finish. And we're going to give it a shot and see how well it goes. In fact, I think what I'm going to try is I think I'm going to dampen this first because dampening it will allow, I think, this glue to wick down in there even better. It will also let me see the crack from the inside, I hope. By being able to see the crack on the inside, I can also use this glue on the inside and wiggle it around and try to get the glue in the crack better. That's my guess. I've not really done that with this glue before. There's the name of it right there. You can see it on the screen. It's called Superphatic. So here we go. All right, so I've got a little pan of warm water here. Yes, you've seen these in the doctor's office. As a matter of fact, that's where this little pan came from. But it came out of the doctor's office 40 or 50 years ago, so, well, maybe not quite that long. 30 years ago, probably. So it's been around a while. Most of the germs are gone off of it. Just wetting this long crack down in hopes that the water will wick down in there and that I can see the crack from the inside better. And I'm starting to see it a little bit, but not very good. I'm working it back and forth as best I can. I can see the water moving in the crack. Pumping it like that will probably make it come through. Yes, it is coming through in places, but only in a few places. But if I can get the water to go through, then I think this glue will go through as well. I could put Titebond on this and I'd feel fairly confident that Titebond would work, but this other glue is even thinner and it seems to have a good hold, so I'm going to go with it. Wiping off the extra water there so that I don't dilute the glue too much. I'm shaking this glue up because I kind of get the impression that it's kind of a mixture. Well, I don't know if it's working or not. I don't see much action at all on it, to be perfectly honest with you. I guess I'll try the suction cup because nothing else seems to be working. Yeah, that's probably a good idea because the suction cup is sticking to the finish and it's lifting it up and making that crack open up. More than it's pushing the stuff down in the crack, it's actually picking the crack up, which I think is good in this case. I think that actually worked, believe it or not. Yeah, I can actually see the glue all the way through. So that actually worked very well, in fact. Better than I thought it would. So now I am going to get some clamps and squeeze this together. I've got the crack closed up and tightened up with these clamps as much as I can. These clamps look like overkill, I'm sure, but they're actually very lightweight. They're a hollow aluminum. These came from Harbor Freight. They're just about perfect for this type of work just because they're so lightweight. I've got heavier pipe clamps. They're so much heavier than these, so these work pretty well. Going across the crack with my thumb and fingers to just try to make sure that I've got it as level as I can get it, and that's about as close as I'm going to get, I think. So we're going to have to let it set until that sets up. This crack's been sitting for probably 45 minutes, something like that, and it seems to be solid. I'm going to work on this little crack now and see if I can do the same thing, get the water in there and get it to take the glue. I've got errands to run, so I would like to have this just sitting while I'm out running errands, and then tomorrow for sure then we can move on with fixing the inside of this thing and get the back on it possibly by tomorrow evening. We are into the next day after gluing those long cracks on the top. I don't see any other cracks in the top itself, so I think those two cracks are fixed. You can sort of feel them, but they're not too bad. I mean, it's almost impossible to fix something like that where you can't feel it at all. But it's pretty good, really. It's pretty level. So now we've got lots of loose bracing on the inside. I mean, I don't really know how many, but a bunch. And every time I glue up loose bracing on the top without using the Go Bar clamps, I get people ask me, why aren't you using the Go Bar? You know, well, you know, the Go Bar works great on a flat top when, you know, there's nothing in the way. But when you got all of this stuff in your way, mainly this bridge, also part of the neck, even the pick guard a little bit, this won't lay flat unless I modify my Go Bar jig. Maybe I'll do that. I'm going to look at that right now. Well, you can probably see I have the guitar sitting in the Go Bar jig here, and what I did to make this work was I routed out a pocket for the fretboard and I routed out a pocket for the bridge, and now it sits flat. By the way, I'm not a real router person because I don't use jigs for cutting out things like that. I just do it freehand. You know, I never heard my guitars complain once, so that's what works for me. But now I just more or less tried to cut these a little bit oversized, you know, like a little bit oversized so it'll fit most bridges up here, and a little bit oversized here so it'll fit most fretboards. No doubt the next one I need to do this on, I'll have to cut some more out, who knows. It's working for this guitar at the moment. Now the trick on this is, even though it's now laying flat, and you know, the exception is where the pick guard is, and you know, certainly it's probably being held up slightly by the pick guard, but this is a thin pick guard, so I'm not too worried about it. If it was one of those real thick plastic pick guards, that might be an issue. So the problem I have now is trying to decide which thing to glue first, because there's so much that needs to be glued. The sides are also loose in places. You can't really see it in the video there, but this side is loose from the top now, at least in that area. Probably over here too. Yep, it is over here too. Around this whole back edge, it's loose. So it's just kind of a nightmare in a way of all the issues it's got. It's almost like building one from scratch. It really is. Except that it's really worse because I have to fix all these individual problems. That's the difference here. Like where this is tore out, things like that. But I might as well get to it, so here we go. Well, here's the first place that taking that bridge pad out paid off is, now I can get under here like this, and you can see that this goes under this brace now, where if the bridge pad was in there, I couldn't get it under there. You know, I can kind of get in there and scratch and make sure there's nothing loose debris under there. And this brace here is not loose at all, which is really weird. So I think I've got it about as close to cleaned out as I can get it. Just going to lift this up by hand, use the glue bottle kind of like a syringe, and force the glue with the pressure coming out of the bottle back under the brace. I can see it coming under here. I'm sure I'm making a mess on the other side of the brace. I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of glue to clean up. Yes, I do. In fact, I think I've got it enough there that I can get a brush under there now. I'll lift it up and just use a brush to get it under there now the rest of the way. There we go. Real good. I like to pump them up and down, as you know, and that just spreads the glue that much better. Got to get glue under this little brace. That might be harder to do, but again, using the pressure of the bottle, it went under there pretty well. Okay, we got the one brace situated, I think. I'm going to do a little cleanup before I put the bars in there. I've got the majority of the glue cleaned up there, and so I'm going to go ahead and kind of center this thing up again and get the first brace or two on it. I just made all of this myself. These are just strips of cedar that I just cut about an 1/8 inch thick. They have enough flexibility to work fine for this. You got to get them to about the right length. You just have to do trial and error till you get the length you're happy with. Some of them are a little bit longer, and that's because when you get down on the tail ends of these braces, you need something a little longer. This one here is a little longer, as an example, down here on the tail end. I think that's perfectly fine there. Now, again, I just do a little more cleanup. A lot of times I'll take the cloth and the tail end of the paintbrush and get in there and rub it around like that, and you can clean it up really good. And then once you get most of it up, then you can actually take the paintbrush, the bristles, and clean it up even a little bit better. I always think cleanup is important for a lot of reasons. It shows that you care, I guess, but it also, I think, is better for the sound of the instrument too. You don't have all that extra glue sticking out there and absorbing sound. You know, I just want the braces to be in the place they should be and nothing else extending out from them like the glue. Now the paintbrush really does a nice job of cleaning up anything extra. So those two braces are back in good shape. I don't think we could probably put another clamp right there, it looks like, maybe. When you start pressing around, you can see your weak areas. That gave a little bit more squeeze to it. So now I'll move things around here where I can get at some more braces that are loose.